Baruchim haboim. Welcome everyone. We're about to begin Be'ezras Hashem together on Daf Nun Zayin Amud Aleph, the new parak, Bameh Isha Yoitzo. Our parak discusses the fact that a person can go out midi araisa min haTorah. He can go out with malbushim and tachshitim. He can go out with malbushim that are there to cover his body, either to protect him from the elements, from the rain, from the heat, from the cold, or in order to then provide him with modesty and kavod. He can also go out with tachshitim min haTorah, to the rishus harabim, that are there to beautify the person. However, the Chachamim came along and said they were concerned that if a person would go out with certain malbushim and certain tachshitim, he may inadvertently take them off and then carry Dalet Amos in the rishus harabim. So they said it's prohibited for certain things. Our Mishnah is going to list several of these things. Says the Mishnah, Bameh Isha Yoitzo. In what things can a woman go out with? Uvameh Eina Yoitzo. And what things can she not go out with? Now the Mishnah lists those things that a woman is Eina Yoitzo. Lo teitze Isha lo bechute tzemer velo bechute pishton velo beritzua sheberoisha. A woman cannot go out with strands of wool and of flax and various straps that are there to tie her braids together. Velo titbol bahen ad shetarapim. And she cannot be toivel in the mikvah until they become loosened. The guy is going to ask right away, what does this have to do with Hilchos Shabbos? The Mishnah continues, V'loi b'toitefes, and not with an ornament that goes as a headband across one's forehead. V'lo b'sarvitin, and not with certain ornaments that go down from a woman's head in order to then provide her beauty by streams of string streaming down her cheeks. Bizman she'ein tefurim, when this is not going to be tied to the head covering that she has. So whether the toitefes or the sarbitin, if they are not going to be tied, they're not going to be tafur, stitched to the head covering, to her cap, then they are going to be prohibited from going out. V'lo bekavul l'rishus harabim, and not with a beged that goes on a woman's forehead. That also she cannot go out to the rishus harabim. So we can medayik from the Mishnah. It says v'lo bekavul l'rishus harabim. Mashma that you could go out with a kavul l'rishus hayochim, meaning in the chotzer. Whereas until now we didn't make that distinction. All of the other things you cannot even go out in the chotzer with. But over here it says kavul l'rishus harabim, because you could go out with a kavul in the chotzer. Why? The Mefarshim explain because the kavul is a minimum type of tachshit, of an ornament that is going to then give her beauty in the eyes of her husband. She shouldn't become disdained, and therefore as a minimum she would wear that kavul, and therefore she's permitted to do so in the chotzer, but not in the rishus harabim. V'lo bi'ir shel zohov, and not with an ornament called the city of Zohov, referring to the city of Yushalayim that was formed in the shape, so to speak, of Yushalayim, that was worn by a woman. V'lo bekatla, not a choker around her neck. V'lo b'nizamim, and not with nose rings. V'lo b'tabaos she'ein aleh choisim, and not with a ring that is for beauty, as opposed to a ring that is with a choisim, a signet ring. A signet ring is not for the beauty, but rather is only to then give authority to a certain document, to give a signature, a stamp, and therefore that's not only also to go out midi rabbanan, that would be also to go out with midi araisa, because that's not a malbush and that's not a tachshit. V'lo b'machat she'eina nekuva, and also when it comes to a brooch clip, a pin without the head, she cannot go out with that. V'im yotza, the Mishnah concludes, eina chayeves chatas. With all of these things, since these things min hatara one can go out with, it was only then a concern of the chachamim, so midirabanan would be also to go out with, and therefore you would not be chayiv echatos. Says the Gemara right away, asking the question, Tevila man dechar shma. Why mention Tevila? What does that have to do with anything? We're dealing with Hilchos Shabbos, with Hoitzah, from going out into the Reshus Harabim or into the Chotzer. And here all of a sudden the Mishnah says, V'lo titbol bahen ad shetarapim. And you cannot be toivil in these things, in these strands of wool or linen, flax, or straps around which is going interdispersed in one's braids. She cannot be toivel with them. Why is that mentioned? Asked the Gemara. Omar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, Omar Rabba bar Avua. Matam ke Omar. The Mishnah is coming to tell you the reason for the aforementioned things. The reason why those things cannot go out with, the strands of wool or flax or the ritzua sheberoisha, is because she would have to be toivel. When she would have to be toivel, she would take off these things. She'd have to then remove them because they would be too tight and they make a chatitza. So she'd have to then remove them, or at least they'd have to then become a little bit. They have to remove them, or at least become somewhat weakened and loosened. And therefore there will be a concern, says the Chachamim, with these things that a woman might take them off inadvertently and then walk Dalet Amos in the Reshus Harabim. Now this doesn't only apply to a married woman. This could be also a young woman, a girl, or it could also refer to a elderly woman, because they can become tamei from a av hatuma, and therefore they would also have to then be toivel in the mikvah. But nonetheless, the Mefarshim also say lo plug. Without any distinction, they said that a woman cannot go out with these things because of this concern. As the Gemara explains, Ma tam komar, ma tam lo teitze isha lo bechutei tzemer, v'lo bechutei pishton. What is the reason why a woman cannot go out with strands of wool and strands of pishton that are interdispersed in her braid? Mipnei she'amru chachamim bechol lo titbo behen asher terapim. Because in the chol during the week, the Chachamim said you cannot go ahead and be toivel with these things until you go ahead and loosen them. After all, the Pasuk says, V'rochat v'mayim es kol b'soroi. And from there, Chazal learn out, not only is there a chatzitza from a person's flesh, from their skin, that doesn't come in contact with the water of the mikvah, but also es b'soro is coming to include with the skin. That means even the hair that has a chatzitza. V'kiven de bechol lo titbol bahen ad sheterapeh b'Shabbos lo teitze. Since during the week a woman cannot be toivel herself until those things are loosened, so that as not to have a chatzitza, therefore she's not allowed to go out with these things on Shabbos, again because she might take them off and walk with them in the Reshus Harabim. Dilma misrami la tvila shel mitzvah v'sharya luhu va'osi la'as vinu dalet amos Reshus Harabim. Because maybe she will then remove them when she does a tvila's mitzvah, and thereby she'll carry them in the Reshus Harabim. Boy minei Rav Kahana me Rav. Rav Kahana asked Rav the following question: what about the following types of ornaments? Tiche chalilta mai. What about the chain that is threaded like a mesh? Is that also going to be a chatzitza that will prevent a woman to go out with on Shabbos as well? Omale orig ka'amris. You were talking about something that is woven. Kol shehu orig loy gazru. Anything that is orug, that is woven, is not considered to be part of the gezerah of going out with on Shabbos. Itmar Nami, you also have another statement that supports this. Omar Rav Huna b'Reid Rav Yoshua, Kol shehu orig loy gazru. Anything that was woven, that they did not make a gzer with, because again, woven is going to be something that the water will not enter, will not become it won't be a chatzitza because it's loose enough, and therefore a woman would not be apt to taking it off. V'ike da'amrei, and there are those that say, Omar Rav Huna b'Rav Yoshua, that Rav Huna said in the name Rav Huna, the son of Rabbi Yoshua, said the following reason. Chazina la'achavosi de lo kapton alayu. The reason why they're not including the gezer, because I saw my sisters bathe with them. They didn't take them off. Meaning to say, they're talking about regular bath, and they weren't makbid. So you see that they weren't concerned about water not getting into the hair. So therefore, these things are certainly permissible to go out with on Shabbos. My Ika asked the Gemara, ben hachlishna, ben hachlishna. What is the difference between the first lashon and the second lashon that Rav Yoshua said? Sorry, that Rav Huna said, and the Rav Huna said, the Rav Huna, the son of Rav Yoshua, said. Answers the Gemara, Ika benaihu. The following is the difference: ben hachlishna or ben hachlishna. Ika benayu de tanifon. The difference is tanifon, if they got soil, they got a little bit dirtied. Lahach lishna da amris koshehu orig loy gazu hanami orug. The first lashon that said because it's something that's woven, therefore it doesn't make a chatzitza. So to over here, it doesn't make a difference if it became a little bit soiled, it won't make a chatzitza, and therefore they didn't make a gezerah for that. Ulahach lishna da amris mishum kepeda. Kiven the tanifon mikbad kapta alayhu. And if the second lashon, since it's a vart in kepeda that the girl or the woman would be concerned about the dirt, the soiled item, therefore they would be apt to take it off. And therefore, if it's dirty, therefore it would be usher to wear and go out with on Shabbos. In other words, according to the second lashon, there's not only a concern of chatzitza, but any other reason why a woman would take it off when going into the mikvah. And therefore, since she would be makbid, even though the water would go through, but she wouldn't want to continue to wear such a thing, and therefore she would take it off, and whereby there would be concern, maybe she's going to walk Daled Amos in the Rishus HaRabim. The Gemara now brings a Mishnah from mikvos, Tnan Hasom, along these lines, ve'elu choytzitzim bodem, and the following make a chatzitza of a person. Again, we said the pasuk is v'rochatz kol b'mayim es kol b'soroi, coming to include a chatzitza not only in the basar, but even on the seyar, in the hair. It says, chutei tzemer v'chutei pishton v'haritzuos b'shiroshe habonos. Those strands of wool and strands of flax and those straps that would be used to be tying their hair tightly for the young ladies. Rabbi Yehuda omer shel tzemer v'shel seyar ein choytzitzin. Rabbi Yehuda says those that are made out of tzemer, out of wool, and those that are made out of hair, maybe another person's hair or an animal's hair, they are not going to be choytzitzin. Because water does get through them, and therefore they don't make a chatzitza. That which is said in the Tanakama, chutei tzemer v'chutei pishton v'haritzuos sheberosh habonos, wasn't only saying that the rosh habonos is going on ritzuos, but even the strands of flax and of wool is also referring to being tied to the rosh habonos tightly. Maski for Rav Yosef lemu'utei mai. What is Rav Huna who says all of these three things are referring to being tied into the hair of the rosh habonos? What is it coming to exclude? If you're coming to exclude that which goes around one's neck, udemai. What are we referring to? We're talking about wool that goes around one's neck, and that's coming to exclude that by saying that indeed is not going to be choytzeitz. Hashta rach al gabe kosher. Now that we say tzemer is rach and it goes on seyar, which is kosher, choytzeitz, that makes a chatzitza. Then rach al gabe rach mi boy. Then tzemer on top of rach, in this case basar, is considered to be rach. Do we need to teach that? Certainly it's going to be choytzeitz, because when you do something on rach, it makes more of a tightness. and therefore it will be more of a reason to say there's a chatzitza. Ela lemu'ute dechute pishton. Rather, it comes to exclude the strands of flax. Ask the Gemara on that. Hashta kosher al gabe kosher. Now that we say pishton, which is kosher, and that goes on something that's kosher, referring to the seyar, and that makes a chatzitza. That's chaytzetz. Kosher al gabe rachmi boy. Then the pishton, which is kosher, and goes on the basar, certainly that will make a chatzitza. So therefore, what are we referring to over here? Was he coming to exclude? Elo omar Rav Yosef hainu taima de Rav Huna lefish ein isha choynekes etz atzmo. He's saying because a woman does not tie too tightly on her neck to cause herself to choke, and therefore he comes to exclude and say something that's tied around the neck will not make a chatzitza. There'll be enough room for the water to go through. Eisve Abaye asked the following. Habonos yoitzois b'shchutin sheba'oznehen. It says in the Brisa, the bonos would go out with strands that would go from their ears. Avaloi b'chabokin shebetzavarein, but not through ties that go around the neck. Mashma, that's going to be choytitz. V'amris ein isha chonekes atzmo chabokin shebetzavarein amayloi. And if you're going to say that indeed a woman does not tie it too tightly in order to prevent herself from choking, whereby there's not going to be a chatzitza, so why then is it also for a woman to go out with chabokin? Ravina answers, Hocha bekatla askinon. Here we're talking about a choker. The isha chonekes etz atzmo, the nechala sheteira kebailas basar. A woman with this katla, this choker, she does want to indeed make it very tight because she wants to then press forward the skin from her neck upwards, making her face look very fleshy. And therefore that was considered to be in fashion and beautiful. Thereby that was something that she had a vested interest to cause it to be tight. And therefore it was so tight that it would then cause a chatzitza.